This headlight bucket is out of my town car, and you can see in the video that there is water on the inside, and every time it rains, this particular headlight bucket gets water in it. Now, a little bit of moisture isn't a big deal because these headlight buckets do have vents in the back. So here's an air vent, and supposedly it'll kind of purge itself. But when the leaks are really bad, like in this headlight bucket, it never gets a chance to equalize the vapor or the water inside, and it just gets kind of nasty like this, and they fog up. The other problem is if you were to get some of this water to actually drip on the bulbs when they're hot, there's a possibility that they'll break. So we're going to try to figure out where this leak is, and then we're going to fix it. Now this particular headlight has these clips, so it looks like this would separate from here, but that's not the case here. This is actually glued. You can see some of the glue down in there. So the manufacturer just has these clips so that they can glue it, clip it, and then the clips hold it in place until the glue dries. So we have to figure out where the leak is, and then we have to figure out how to fix the leak. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pull the actual headlights off the back of the unit. They just kind of twist and pop. I think we all know how to do that. We'll pull the headlights out, and then we'll fill this up with water and see if we can find a leak, and then we'll go from there. So I've pulled the bulbs out, and one thing worth mentioning is these are O-rings, and you want to make sure they're nice and clean and they're not broken, because if this is broken, water can run back around. It's kind of unlikely, but it can do it. It can run back around this bulb and into the headlight bucket, and that could be where your moisture is coming from. Secondly, never touch the bulb with your fingers. The oil on your hands puts a residue on it and makes them go out prematurely. This style has kind of a rubber gasket around it. Make sure they're all nice and clean and not cracked up. Just kind of look for obvious signs of where water could get into it. So far I don't see any, so I'm going to assume that the glue has a breach in it somewhere along here, and we'll find out here in a second. So we're actually going to fill this up with water, or at least put some water in it, so we can try to find that leak. So I've spotted the leak. It's a very slow drip right about where this clip is. That might be a little harder to fix, but I'll show you how we're going to do it. And it shouldn't be too difficult. So now that we have the water drained out of this headlight bucket and we know where the leak is, we still need to dry it out really well inside before we can fix that leak. So I recommend you use a heat gun. If you have a heat gun, it's also very important that you have one that you can dial the heat back, because you don't want to melt this. You want to put it on a very low heat. This is a porta cable. They're really cheap and they work really well. I'll put a link in the description on where you can buy one of these. I suppose if you don't have one, you can use a hairdryer, but basically you just want to get it on a low heat and stick it in one of the bulb holes and let it run for maybe half an hour or so, and that'll dry this out really well, and then we'll come back and we'll fix it. The inside of this headlight bucket is now dry, and it looks pretty clear, as you can see. One thing I did do is I went ahead and I put all the light bulbs back in to seal off the holes. It's still very hot inside, and there's a reason for that. I also went and took all of the air vents, and I put hot glue in them. I plugged them, every single one of them. And the reason is, as the hot air cools down, it's going to shrink, and it's going to pull fresh air back in. But we don't want it to pull fresh air back in. We want to put some glue along this crack, and as that air cools down, it's going to pull some of that glue further down inside to the leak and seal it off. And that's what we're going to do now. And we know where the leak is. We know the leak is right along here, because we found it when we filled it up. So we're just going to put some glue down in there, and all I'm going to use is just some clear silicone. I like the Loctite brand. I think it holds up a little better, but you don't have to use that. And we're just going to ooze it down into this crack just like this, because that's where our leak is. And as the air cools down inside this headlight bucket, it's going to suck some of this silicone back down into this crack. And we know it's actually right here because we found it. And that's all we got to do. So we'll let this cool down overnight, and in the morning we'll pull off all the hot glue plugs that we put in there, and we'll put it back in the car, and this headlight bucket should no longer leak, and it'll be fixed. I think now would be the time to make a blinker fluid joke. I think we're a little low on blinker fluid.